There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct.
We return now to France. Yesterday's attacks, among other things, put a spotlight on the growing tensions between the country's Muslim and immigrant community and a large portion of French society.
In recent years, France has grappled with the escalating threat of extremism, a challenge that has profoundly affected its societal fabric. This issue has prompted the French government to employ a multifaceted strategy aimed at curbing the spread of extremist ideologies.
2 days after a Russian-born Islamist extremist beheaded a school teacher in France, reports suggest that the country is preparing to expel around 231 foreigners on government watch lists for suspected extremist religious beliefs. Among the total number of suspects, 180 people are currently in prison and 51 are due to be arrested. France's Interior Minister has reportedly asked his ministry to examine the people wishing to obtain the status of refugee.
This new approach combines legislative measures, community engagement, technological advancements, and international cooperation to create a comprehensive defense against radicalization. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. The roots of extremism in France are complex and multifaceted.
Beyond the United Kingdom, France has endured the worst terrorist attacks in Europe during the past 2 years, attacks that have killed 239 people. There was the assault on the offices of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in January of 2015, followed by the mass shootings at a concert hall and cafes in Paris in November, and then last summer's Bastille Day truck attack on pedestrians on the boardwalk in Nice.
Often intertwining social, economic, and political factors. Marginalized communities, socioeconomic disparities, and the disillusionment with mainstream political discourse have created fertile ground for radical ideologies to take hold.
Well, you know, there's a political economy of jihadism that, you know, it's easy to kill people. But after a while, when you do not manage to mobilize the masses on your behalf, then violence turns against its perpetrators.
The government recognizes that a purely punitive approach is insufficient to address these deeply ingrained issues. Thus, the new strategy encompasses preventive measures aimed at addressing the underlying causes of radicalization. One of the central pillars of France's new strategy is the reinforcement of legislative frameworks to better tackle extremism.
What's happening in France? Why is it different than the rest of Europe in terms of these attacks?
Well, it was different because, as you said, we suffered 239 dead. The reason why they focused on France was that they thought that they could take the French political process hostage. They thought that the more attacks there would be, then the more people would vote for the extreme right because they felt that all Muslims were culprits or something.
In recent years, the French government has introduced a series of laws designed to enhance its ability to monitor and intervene in activities associated with radicalization. The controversial anti-separatism law, officially named the Law Reinforcing Republican Principles, is a significant component of this legislative push.
French President Emmanuel Macron's government is working on a new migration bill. The administration wants to crack down on illegal immigration while at the same time welcoming much-needed skilled workers. The bill also aims for tougher action against extremism and terrorism. But rights workers fear that it will just make life for new arrivals even more difficult.
Enacted in 2021, this law aims to prevent the spread of ideologies that challenge the secular values of the French Republic. It includes measures to enhance oversight of religious organizations, ensure transparency in their funding, and limit homeschooling to prevent children from being indoctrinated with extremist views. Additionally, France has bolstered its counter-terrorism laws, granting security agencies greater powers to surveil and detain individuals suspected of extremist activities. These measures, while criticized by some for potentially infringing on civil liberties, are viewed by the government as necessary tools to preemptively address threats before they materialize. The balance between security and civil liberties remains a contentious issue, but the French government maintains that these steps are crucial to safeguarding the nation. Community engagement is another cornerstone of France's strategy against extremism.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Recognizing that radicalization often occurs at the grassroots level, the government has launched initiatives aimed at fostering social cohesion and resilience within vulnerable communities. Programs designed to promote integration, improve access to education and employment, and enhance community policing are central to this effort. By addressing the socioeconomic disparities that can lead to disenfranchisement and radicalization, these initiatives aim to create a more inclusive society where extremism has less appeal.
So what did you talk about with the kids?
I said, okay, the first thing I want to tell you is that I don't know what to tell you. But then I told them a story a story that happened 9 years ago at my school. We were threatened by Islamist groups, and I was personally on the line, and I had my name on every extremist Islamist blog in France. The name of the man that started it all was the same one that started everything against Samuel Paty 3 weeks ago. And so I told them, well, you know what, it could have been me.
A critical component of this community-focused approach is the involvement of local actors and civil society organizations. The French government has increasingly collaborated with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, religious leaders, and community groups to develop and implement preventive measures. These partnerships are essential for building trust and ensuring that interventions are culturally sensitive and effective. For instance, the government has worked with Muslim communities to develop counter-narratives to extremist ideologies, emphasizing the peaceful and tolerant teachings of Islam. In the digital age, the internet has become a powerful tool for the dissemination of extremist ideologies. Recognizing this, France has intensified its efforts to combat online radicalization. The government has invested in advanced technologies and algorithms to monitor and counter extremist content on social media platforms. This involves not only tracking and removing harmful content, but also identifying and disrupting networks that spread radical ideologies. Additionally, France has engaged in dialogue with major tech companies to enhance their cooperation in identifying and removing extremist material from their platforms. France's strategy also includes initiatives aimed at promoting digital literacy and critical thinking skills among its citizens, particularly the youth.
Was dealing with the aftermath of the January 2015 attacks, because Amédi Coulibaly was a boy from this particular neighborhood, and in many ways you could argue that this town and the inhabitants of the town were doubly struck by the attacks, and they were trying to understand what was going on. And I'd been called with a colleague as a sociologist to try to help them out, to look at messages, and so we've been working all days reading at messages that inhabitants from Grigny had posted after the 2015 January attacks.
By equipping individuals with the tools to critically assess online content and recognize propaganda, the government aims to reduce the susceptibility of its population to extremist messages. Educational programs in schools, community centers, and online platforms play a crucial role in this preventive effort. Another vital aspect of France's new strategy is the rehabilitation and reintegration of individuals who have been radicalized. The government acknowledges that punitive measures alone are insufficient, and that a more holistic approach is needed to address the root causes of radicalization. To this end, France has developed rehabilitation programs aimed at de-radicalizing individuals and reintegrating them into society. These programs often involve psychological counseling, vocational training, and mentorship to help individuals find a constructive path forward. The rehabilitation efforts extend to prisons, which have been identified as significant incubators for radicalization. France has implemented specialized units within its prison system to separate extremist inmates from the general population and provide them with targeted rehabilitation programs.
And as you point out, there's a little bit more of a systematic thought given to what this third generation of terrorists are doing.
Well, definitely. The issue is to destabilize society and to provoke retaliation, from the majority of society. so as to lead to a sort of enclave wars in Europe. You know, we have those, what we call those banlieues, where impoverished young people, children of immigrants or others, live with a very high level of unemployment, rates that can reach up to 40% at times. So for those people, there's not much hope. They went to school, they have no jobs, they do drugs, or they go to jail.
This approach aims to prevent the spread of radical ideologies within the prison environment and support the reintegration of former extremists upon their release. International cooperation is another critical element of France's strategy to combat extremism. The transnational nature of extremist networks necessitates collaboration with other countries and international organizations. France has strengthened its partnerships with European Union member states, as well as with countries in North Africa and the Middle East, to share intelligence, coordinate counter-terrorism efforts, and address the cross-border flow of radicalized individuals and materials. The French government has also played an active role in global forums dedicated to countering extremism. By participating in international initiatives and contributing to the development of best practices, France seeks to enhance the global response to the threat of extremism.
The bill is a compromise forged between Macron's party and the conservative opposition. It underlines a notable rightward trend in European politics, causing a chip of unease among Macron's left-leaning lawmakers. The vote also exposes the delicate balance in Macron's centrist majority.
This includes its involvement in the Global Counterterrorism Forum and the United Nations efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism. An important dimension of France's strategy is its focus on the ideological battle against extremism. The government recognizes that military and law enforcement measures, while essential, are not sufficient to address the ideological roots of radicalization. Therefore, France has invested in initiatives aimed at countering extremist propaganda and promoting alternative narratives that emphasize tolerance, diversity, and democratic values.
And you can realize as well the big discrepancy between what Amédi Coulibaly was trying to show off in becoming a terrorist and the reality of his life. Because in many ways you could argue that by becoming a terrorist and by even changing his name, he's just shouting to the whole wide world, you know, I've changed, I'm different, I'm better, and I'm better than you in many ways. But if you look at what he's been doing and what he's done actually to manage to do those attacks. I mean, he actually been doing what he's been doing for 10 to 15 years.
These efforts involve collaboration with scholars, religious leaders, and media organizations to develop and disseminate content that challenges extremist ideologies and promotes a more inclusive worldview. Moreover, France has sought to address the grievances that can lead to radicalization by promoting social justice and equality. The government has launched programs aimed at reducing discrimination, promoting gender equality, and addressing other social issues that can contribute to feelings of marginalization and resentment. By creating a more just and equitable society, France aims to reduce the appeal of extremist ideologies that exploit these grievances. The implementation of this multifaceted strategy has not been without challenges. France has faced criticism both domestically and internationally for some of its measures, particularly those seen as infringing on civil liberties. Balancing the need for security with the protection of individual rights remains a delicate and contentious issue. The government has sought to address these concerns by emphasizing the importance of transparency, accountability, and the rule of law in its counter-extremism efforts. Furthermore, the success of France's strategy depends on the active participation and support of its citizens. Public awareness and engagement are crucial for the effectiveness of preventive measures and community-based initiatives. The government has launched campaigns to raise awareness about the dangers of extremism and encourage citizens to report suspicious activities. These efforts aim to foster a sense of collective responsibility and resilience against the threat of radicalization.
Policiers dans la rue, comme ça?
Non, pas autant. Maintenant, c'est la situation, la situation qui fait qu'ils sortent. Je la vois plus comme avant.
Maintenant, vous le voyez comment?
Je la vois plus comme avant. Je sais pas, j'ai l'impression de la découvrir maintenant. Parce que l'église, on passe devant, on regarde, on jette un coup d'œil comme ça, vite fait, quoi. Puis là, je découvre ces pierres, je découvre un peu tout ce qu'il y a, je la vois autrement.
The French government has also recognized the importance of continuous evaluation and adaptation of its strategy.
Because you have to remember that the terrorist jihadists want to proselytize among other Muslims, and they want to sort of bring them under their banner, because most of our Muslim compatriots just loathe them and hate them. But, you know, they want to say, look, the French are racist, the French vote for the extreme right, therefore there is no way for you in Europe, and the only way for you to be safe is to rally with us.
The dynamic nature of extremism requires a flexible and responsive approach that can adapt to new challenges and threats. To this end, France has established mechanisms for monitoring and assessing the effectiveness of its measures, allowing for adjustments and improvements based on feedback and emerging trends. France's legislative framework forms the backbone of its strategy against extremism. The anti-separatism law is a landmark in this context, symbolizing the government's resolve to uphold the secular values of the French Republic. This law, while controversial, represents a significant shift in how France addresses the threat of radical ideologies. The law mandates stricter oversight of religious institutions, ensuring that they adhere to the principles of secularism and transparency.
But for few of the kids who remain in the show, and actually most of the time it's the same profile. It's the teenagers or the young men. It's not even teenager. That's mainly the main problems. Men turning in their late 20s, early 30s, they feel stuck because they've been in that same sort of petty crime environment for so long that they cannot see another kind of life, and they feel stuck. And because they feel stuck, as well, they become good at what they've.
By doing so, the government aims to prevent the misuse of religious platforms for spreading extremist ideologies. Another critical aspect of this legislation is its impact on education. The law imposes stringent regulations on homeschooling, a practice sometimes exploited to indoctrinate children with radical beliefs away from the scrutiny of public education systems. By tightening these regulations, France aims to ensure that all children receive an education grounded in the values of the Republic, promoting tolerance and critical thinking. However, the implementation of these laws has not been without controversy. Critics argue that such measures could infringe upon religious freedoms and civil liberties, particularly affecting Muslim communities. The government, on the other hand, contends that these steps are necessary to prevent the spread of radical ideologies that threaten national security and social cohesion. This delicate balance between security and freedom remains a contentious issue, necessitating ongoing dialogue and adjustments to ensure that the measures are both effective and fair. At the heart of France's strategy to combat extremism lies the engagement with communities, particularly those vulnerable to radicalization. The government has recognized that socioeconomic disparities and feelings of marginalization are significant drivers of radicalization. To address these issues, France has implemented a range of initiatives aimed at fostering social cohesion and integration. One such initiative is the Quartier Prioritaire de la Politique de la Ville, QPV, which targets disadvantaged urban areas with high levels of poverty and unemployment. The QPV program focuses on improving living conditions, enhancing access to education and employment opportunities, and fostering a sense of community. By addressing the root causes of disenfranchisement, these efforts aim to reduce the allure of extremist ideologies that promise a sense of purpose and belonging. Furthermore, the French government has placed significant emphasis on education as a tool for preventing radicalization. Schools are seen as crucial arenas for promoting the values of the Republic and countering extremist narratives. Educational programs have been developed to teach students about critical thinking, digital literacy, and the dangers of radicalization. Teachers are also being trained to recognize early signs of radicalization and provide appropriate interventions. In addition to these institutional efforts, grassroots community engagement plays a vital role. The government collaborates with local actors, including NGOs, religious leaders, and community groups, to develop and implement preventive measures. These partnerships are essential for building trust and ensuring that interventions are culturally sensitive and effective. For example, programs aimed at empowering women in vulnerable communities have been successful in promoting social cohesion and reducing the influence of extremist ideologies. In the digital age, the internet has become a critical battleground in the fight against extremism. Recognizing this, France has invested heavily in technological advancements to monitor and counter the spread of extremist content online. The government's approach combines sophisticated surveillance tools with proactive measures to disrupt the activities of radical networks. France has developed advanced algorithms and artificial intelligence (AI) systems capable of identifying and flagging extremist content on social media platforms. These technologies enable authorities to monitor online conversations and track the dissemination of radical ideologies in real time. By doing so, they can swiftly intervene and prevent the spread of harmful content. In addition to these surveillance measures, France has engaged in dialogue with major tech companies to enhance their cooperation in combating online extremism. This collaboration has led to the development of protocols for the rapid removal of extremist material from online platforms. The government has also pushed for greater transparency and accountability from these companies regarding their efforts to counter extremist content. However, the reliance on technological solutions raises important ethical and practical questions. Privacy concerns are paramount, as increased surveillance can infringe upon individuals' rights to privacy and freedom of expression. The challenge lies in finding a balance between effective monitoring and the protection of civil liberties. To address these concerns, France has established oversight mechanisms to ensure that surveillance activities are conducted within the
was dealing with the aftermath of the January 2015 attacks, because Amédi Coulibaly was a boy from this particular neighborhood, and in many ways you could argue that this town and the inhabitants of the town were doubly struck by the attacks, and they were trying to understand what was going on. And I'd been called with a colleague as a sociologist to try to help them out, to look at messages, and so we've been working all days reading at messages that inhabitants from Grigny had posted after the 2015 January attacks.
Bounds of the law and respect fundamental rights. Recognizing that punitive measures alone are insufficient to address the threat of extremism, France has developed comprehensive rehabilitation and reintegration programs. These initiatives aim to de-radicalize individuals and support their reintegration into society, thereby preventing recidivism and reducing the overall threat of extremism. The rehabilitation programs in France are multifaceted, involving psychological counseling, vocational training, and mentorship. These programs are tailored to the needs of individuals, addressing the underlying causes of their radicalization and providing them with the skills and support needed to build a constructive future. By offering alternatives to extremist ideologies, these programs aim to reduce the appeal of radicalization. Prisons, identified as significant incubators for radicalization, are a focal point of these efforts. France has implemented specialized units within its prison system to separate extremist inmates from the general population and provide them with targeted rehabilitation programs. This approach aims to prevent the spread of radical ideologies within prisons and support the reintegration of former extremists upon their release. One of the key challenges in these rehabilitation efforts is the need for specialized staff and resources. Effective rehabilitation requires trained professionals who can engage with radicalized individuals and address their psychological and social needs. France has invested in training programs for prison staff, social workers, and psychologists to enhance their ability to work with radicalized individuals. The transnational nature of extremist networks necessitates robust international cooperation. France has recognized the importance of collaborating with other countries and international organizations to combat the global threat of extremism. This cooperation involves intelligence sharing, joint counterterrorism operations.
So what did you talk about with the kids?
I said, okay, the first thing I want to tell you is that I don't know what to tell you. But then I told them a story that happened 9 years ago at my school. We were threatened by Islamist groups, and I was personally on the line, and I had my name on every extremist Islamist blog in France. The name of the man that started it all was the same one that started everything against Samuel Paty 3 weeks ago. And so I told them, well, you know what, it could have been me.
And coordinated efforts to address the cross-border flow of radicalized individuals and materials. France has strengthened its partnerships with European Union member states, leveraging the EU's frameworks for intelligence sharing and counterterrorism coordination. Additionally, France has engaged with countries in North Africa and the Middle East, regions that are often sources of radicalization and extremist activities. These partnerships focus on enhancing border security, disrupting terrorist financing networks, and supporting efforts to counter radicalization in these regions. On the global stage, France has played an active role in international forums dedicated to countering extremism. The country's participation in the Global Counter-Terrorism Forum and its contributions to the United Nations efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism demonstrate its commitment to a coordinated global response. By sharing best practices and contributing to the development of international standards, France seeks to enhance the effectiveness of global counter-extremism efforts. Addressing the ideological roots of extremism is a critical component of France's strategy. The government recognizes that military and law enforcement measures alone are insufficient to counter the spread of radical ideologies. Therefore, France has invested in initiatives aimed at challenging extremist narratives and promoting alternative visions based on tolerance, diversity, and democratic values.
Est-ce que l'islam peut exister en France?
Non, il ne peut pas s'adapter en tout cas en France, parce que notre rapport à la société n'est pas le même. Notre rapport de traiter la femme, de traiter les institutions, la laïcité, etc. Il n'y a rien en fait qui est compatible avec l'islam.
Et c'est l'islam en particulier ou c'est toutes les religions étrangères?
Non, c'est l'islam en particulier. L'islam en particulier a une volonté de conquête et ils ont une volonté d'islamiser la France.
C'est quoi l'islamisation de la France?
Alors, très concrètement, aujourd'hui en France, la France qui est pourtant de culture chrétienne.
One such initiative is the development of counter-narratives that emphasize the peaceful and inclusive teachings of Islam. By collaborating with religious scholars and community leaders, the government aims to provide credible alternatives to the distorted interpretations of Islam propagated by extremist groups. These counter-narratives are disseminated through various channels, including social media, community programs, and educational materials. Moreover, France has sought to promote a broader cultural and social discourse that challenges the grievances exploited by extremist ideologies. Programs aimed at reducing discrimination, promoting gender equality, and addressing other social issues are integral to this effort. By creating a more just and equitable society, France aims to undermine the appeal of extremist ideologies that thrive on feelings of injustice and marginalization.
This big threat that was envisaged, that we would have so many returnees who would have been trained and brainwashed and would be very powerful in staging huge attacks, has not been that salient as we thought it would be. And then the people there on ISIS territory are, suffer from the bombings and from the droning, and therefore they're sort of trapped there for the time being.
The government's efforts also extend to the media, which plays a crucial role in shaping public perceptions and narratives. France has encouraged media organizations to adopt responsible reporting practices that avoid sensationalism and provide balanced coverage of issues related to extremism. This approach aims to prevent the stigmatization of communities and reduce the amplification of extremist messages.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
The dynamic nature of extremism necessitates a flexible and responsive approach. France has established mechanisms for continuous evaluation and adaptation of its strategy to ensure its effectiveness in the face of evolving threats. This involves regular assessments of the impact of legislative measures, community programs, and technological interventions. Feedback from stakeholders, including law enforcement agencies, community organizations, and the public, is integral to this process. By incorporating diverse perspectives, the government aims to identify gaps and areas for improvement in its strategy. This iterative approach allows France to refine its measures and adapt to new challenges as they arise. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on France's approach to extremism? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.